August 3rd, 12:12 a.m. All right. I didn't get to bed at the time that I hoped to today, but it was an extremely productive day. I just uploaded the final major update for Six Samurai's demo on Steam, at least until we participate in Next Fest, which is not going to be till, I don't even know. Probably at least like 8 months or something from now, guys. So now that that's done, I can tomorrow for sure schedule reset, everything will be fine. I've got no pressure now, except for the fact that I also have to get a trailer ready in about 10 days. But doesn't matter, I'm not gonna kill myself over that one. I really got to nail not getting sucked into things, and that's what happened tonight. I should have stopped myself, but it's okay. One step at a time, folks. Otherwise, I'm doing fantastic. I had a great day. Did all my usual stuff, spent some time outside. Let me show you what I got done on the game today. Okay, first of all, the major thing I wanted to address today was how the aiming works. Because I had some people mention that sometimes they felt like they had a hard time being able to tell whether or not they actually missed an enemy or whether the game screwed up somehow and that they should have hit the enemy. And before, I addressed that a little bit by making the game more forgiving. One second, I want to show you. Okay. I addressed it before by making it so that the enemy's collision and your attack range are all bigger and more generous, so it's like a lot more obvious when you miss now. Now that's still the case, and that works well enough. However, I noticed that another thing that can throw you off, and this is really the major thing, because nothing was ever wrong with the game. It was always very, very accurate with how it worked, and I wanted it to be very precise. But the thing is the game can work in such a way where it is so precise where even though you dash so fast, it's possible for an enemy to be right on the edge of your aim, and then in the middle of you dashing, they step out of the way, and then you miss them. So let me start playing this here for a second. And so the problem with this is technically it's correct, and that was my original intended design, but it doesn't read to the player that way. Like, the intent is that you can see that, oh yeah, he got out of the way, so I missed. But in the game, because the game feeds this information to you about whether or not you're targeting an enemy correctly by highlighting them like this, when you start to dash, the enemy is highlighted, so you think you're gonna hit him, and then the dash happens so fast and the enemy moves out of the way at like a split second, kind of on the edge speed thing. And so it all happens so fast that to you it just looks like, well, I had him targeted, he was highlighted, and then I dashed, and then for some reason I didn't hit him. Really what happened is you actually missed and he moved out of the way, but to you, all you can see as the player is, I don't know, it seems like I should have hit him. And I realized that that was really the major problem. I think that's like the main issue here. So it's kind of like the game is actually unintentionally deceiving you into thinking you should have hit him when actually it's correct that you didn't hit him. So I spent a lot of time thinking about how to deal with this. I was like, should I just make it so that, and let me, hold on, move ahead through the level here for a second. Yeah, hold on. Okay. So, yeah, I was thinking, like, what should I do about this? Should I just make it so that when you have guys targeted, maybe it just guarantees that you'll hit them no matter what happens? But then I realized there could be all kinds of problems with that could come up later, and I do eventually want there to be enemies that will intentionally get out of the way when you try to hit them. Maybe they dash away. So the logic is all really good. I want to keep it the way that it works. And then I also realized that it wouldn't solve the problem where, for example, a guy could also move out of the way like a frame before you start dashing. You know, like it looks to you like he's highlighted, and he is, and then you go to click, but you click like a split second late and he stepped out of the way at the last second. So that situation also wouldn't be solved by guaranteeing that you hit highlighted guys, because technically he wasn't highlighted when you first went to attack him, right? So that's not really a viable solution. And then I thought about stuff like, well, maybe right when you land at the end of the dash, I do one last attack that has like a slightly larger range, but then it's like, well, why don't I just make your range bigger? But then if I make your attack range bigger again, which I've already made it, I think, big enough without it being too ridiculous, then I get stuck in this like loop where you'll still have the same problem of thinking you should have hit guys when they're highlighted. So I keep going back and forth like this in my head, and eventually I realize, wait, the problem here really is just the game is tricking the player into believing they should have hit the enemy when they didn't. So I just thought, well, why don't I do the reverse? Why don't I trick the player into thinking that they should have missed, but instead they end up hitting them? So what I did is I made it so that the targeting for your cursor is actually smaller now. The range for it is smaller than your real attack range, but just by a tiny bit. So that essentially it creates a gap where even though the enemy isn't showing up as highlighted, he is technically just barely within your attack range. And this way it makes it so that if you miss now, you go to dodge or you go to attack and you end up not hitting him, there's guaranteed to have been like a decent amount of time during which he wasn't highlighted. So it'll be really clear that you missed. And if he happens to step out at that last second, that kind of problem I was talking about, even if it's at the beginning of your attack or if it's during the attack or anything, it won't matter, because now he will show up, even if he shows up as not highlighted because he stepped out at the last second, just because you saw him as highlighted, that will guarantee that he's still technically in range, if you get what I'm saying. So anyway, obvious visual demonstration here is I'm just going to show you how I'm going to wait for this guy to be highlighted, and you'll see what I mean. If I attack him just like a split second after he's not highlighted, see, I still end up hitting him, right? So the highlighting now is more conservative about what it shows you, what it makes you think you're going to hit, but in reality, you have a little bit of leeway. And I found that by adding this little trick into the game, I think that should solve the problem with people being a little confused about it. And combined with the much more generous collision stuff now, I feel like now when you miss, it is really, really obvious. The game is so fast that I'm sure some people's senses will still be a little fooled by things like this, but anyone with an intentionally functioning, focused brain will be able to see very clearly that like you're definitely missing now, and the game won't trick you in any way, which it never was. It never meant to trick you, and it was always very accurate, but it could confuse you just because things happen so fast and because of the way the game feeds you information and stuff. So anyway, so it's pretty sick. I'm very happy with it. And then not only did I make this change, but I also made it so that in the game's tutorial level, I actually make the range of your targeting cursor the same as the range of your attack, so that in the prologue, you won't be able to tell that I do this trick later in the game. Like, just so that accidentally players don't discover in the prologue, like, oh, they don't even have to be highlighted to be able to kill them. They just have to be on the edge, and then maybe they start playing the game that way, and then they get pissed off because they're like, oh, I can't tell how close they have to be or whatever. So in the tutorial, I specifically made it so that it actually lines up perfectly, and if they're highlighted, you kill them. If they aren't, you won't. So hopefully people playing for the first time, they will see that very clearly and then learn that, and then for the rest of the game, they'll play with that in mind, but not realizing that actually you have a little bit of leeway outside of that as well. And so I'm hoping this is a clever little psychological trick that makes a difference in helping out the people who struggled with that particular aspect of the game or found it annoying or whatever. I don't mind that it takes away a little bit of the precision of the game in exchange for making it feel a little more fair, so to speak, making it more clear to be able to read the game easier for everyone. So anyway, that was the major thing I wanted to address today, so I did that successfully. And then, of course, as always happens, a whole bunch of other stuff pops up. First of all, I find a bug that I realized, so at the end of the demo, you get a conversation where you can... Is this thing on? Yeah. At the end of the demo, you get a conversation where you can choose to go to the Steam store page, wishlist the game, give feedback, whatever. And there was a bug where if you're going into, let's say, the first level of the game, or I would imagine actually almost any conversational point in the game where you have to give a response, if you spam one of the answers as fast as possible, it'll actually open up the wish list page. So this was a stupid bug in my code. Whatever, it's not that interesting, but anyway, so I fixed that so that doesn't happen anymore. There's a couple small tight spaces I showed yesterday in the third level with the dashers. They kind of need a little extra space to be able to move around obstacles. So I tightened up a couple more small spaces that were annoying me a bit in that level that I think make it better. And there were some bugs with the dodge slow-mo and the interaction between that and the slow-mo that comes from the Girameki technique. So I had to fix up all those bugs. And then in the tutorial, so a while back, I added to the bar level an arrow that indicates to you how to exit the level, because I found that there's a handful of people who mistook the staircase that leads out of the level for a bookcase, so they never tried to go out that way. So to help people not waste their time, I threw in a little indicator arrow that fades in when you get close to it. So I added that to the tutorial as well, because I had a couple people tell me that it took them a little bit to figure out what they were supposed to do to leave the tutorial. And I think part of the problem also is I just discovered another bug that I had happening is that Genyu doesn't follow you around anymore in the tutorial. He used to do that. And anyway, that was the result of some AI changes I made. So I fixed that, and I suspect that might have been part of the reason why people were confused in the tutorial. I think if you see him following around you, you realize like, oh, I see, I have to like probably go back to the front. But he wasn't following you, and there's no indication, so I can see why people maybe got confused and were like, what the fuck am I supposed to do? So I added I fixed Genyu, so he follows you now, and then I went ahead, just in case anyway, and added an arrow that points to the beginning of the level, so hopefully people don't get stuck on that again. I can't help but wonder if there were people out there who played the game and just like gave up in the tutorial because they were frustrated not knowing what to do. Yeah, and that's it. That's everything that I did. And then I just uploaded the patch just now to Steam, so it is live. Updated all the achievements and stuff to match with the new upgrades, and posted the patch notes and all that, and that's it. So very productive day, even if I didn't go to bed at the hour I wanted to. About to bake some salmon, eat that, and then I'm gonna hit the hay. But I'm still happy with what I got going on here. And now that I'm done with all that, I feel less pressured. I should probably feel more pressured because I have to make a trailer for that showcase, but I'm gonna kind of like chill out a bit now. Tomorrow, I want to update my first game, The Life of a Magical Circle, to use my new logo and the sound intro to keep with my new branding. And once that's done, finally, I'm gonna get to making my videos. Now, when it comes to my promotional videos, my TikToks, shorts, YouTube videos, whatever, I've mentioned I've been thinking a lot about that and working on that recently. And I was pretty happy with what I came up with, this new persona brand thing I was gonna do. One problem I had with it, though, was I realized today, I was looking over the scripts while I was in the park, and I realized that I was happy with the style of it, and I was happy with the idea, but the way I was writing the scripts was very obviously advertisement style, like promotional. And what I really wanted to do with this, and for the long term, was to have something that's more evergreen, something that people can come back and watch, or if they see my shorts and they find it interesting, they'll go through and watch all the other ones. Because almost everything I've made up until now, I feel like is very promotional in nature, and is the kind of thing that, like, once you already know about the game, you're not going to go back and watch this other stuff because it's all older, outdated stuff, right? So I sat down and thought really hard about and tried to write a new script where I took the same ideas that I came up with, but tried to rewrite it in such a way as to make it interesting and almost like I'm covering a different topic with each video that I make. And so I came up with a guideline where every video has to make a statement about something, has to teach the person watching something, and then somehow include it includes something that somehow promotes my games, that connects it in some way. So I followed that recipe and came up with my first script, and now I'm really happy with it. it's in the style and everything that I wanted, that I'm really happy and excited with. And now I think it's also in a format that can be rewatched, and which is hopefully, possibly interesting even to people who maybe don't even care about playing my games. But I just, hopefully these videos will just be interesting in and of themselves. That's the goal. That's kind of what I'm hoping will happen. But even if it does, even if it doesn't matter. I am happy with the artistic nature of what I'm doing. I'm trying to focus more on just making stuff I like making now, and as I mentioned before, not worrying so much about the result, but just worrying about making something that's good and that I'm happy with, and that I want to say proud of, but sometimes pride can be a bad thing. That's why I'm hesitating nonetheless. So that's what I did for the promotional stuff. So happy with that. And so yeah, tomorrow I'm going to try to change up that logo thing with Life of a Madrigal Circle, and then I'm going to probably write another script for that. I wrote one. I want to have at least a couple ready to go, and then I'll start finally filming it, and then experimenting with the editing and come up with a final template for that, and hopefully start that new promotional campaign within the next week or so. Really looking forward to it. In the meantime, however, after I first get my logo into my old game, I also am going to try to reseat my graphics card to see if that will help. I've mentioned I've been having problems with that, like ever since I got this computer, just constant driver crashes and stuff, and it's definitely something with the card. So I'm gonna do a Hail Mary first before I deal with contacting the manufacturer and having to put it in RMA and figuring out like how I'm gonna get a card in the meantime to use while they fill out the RMA, which is probably gonna take 2 or 3 weeks. So yeah, I'm gonna try just reseating it and see if that helps. It's gonna be pretty funny if it does, knowing I was sitting on this for like a year not fixing this problem, and all I had to do was take it out and put it back in. Sometimes that works. I highly doubt it's gonna help, but it's worth a shot. And then if that doesn't work, I'm gonna yeah, figure out what I'm gonna do. Yeah, I don't know. I think that's pretty much it. Since it's already about 12:30, I think I'm gonna call it here for this one. I'm feeling really good. I will say one thing. So this is the first time, I think really genuinely the first time since I moved to Montreal, that, okay, just before I moved to Montreal, I was in a really, really great place. Mentally, I mean, physically, I felt really good. I was taking good care of myself, and I felt like I had started a new phase of my life. And I thought I had worked through a lot of issues that I had, and matured and developed significantly, and I did. But I underestimated just how much more there was for me to go in terms of getting past this particularly difficult part of my life. So I think when I moved to Montreal, this was such a big change for me that I don't want to say put me into a shock, but it's like I faced so many new things that were difficult for me or made me feel insecure or whatever, things like that. And then I think that almost immediately, now that I think about it, I realized within a week of moving here, it's actually crazy now that I think about this, man. I was living really well for like, I think at least 4 months, maybe half a year before I moved here. And literally within the week that I moved in here, I indulged in all of my worst vices again. It's crazy now that I think about it. Like I really just lost sight of everything. And then things were kind of on and off, and then good and then bad sometimes. And it was up and down. But it was still always like, I was really just repeating the same stuff I was always doing. So it wasn't until only just now, this past, what has it been? Even like, I don't even know if it's been 2 weeks yet. I think it's only been like 1 week since I've really been nailing things now. But this is the first time, I think, since moving here that I finally feel like I'm back to that place I was at just before I moved here. And part of the difficulty of it, and I think part of why I also had such a hard time getting back to this place, is because I still had so many unresolved feelings about things deep down inside of me. And the second I stopped distracting myself with a bunch of stuff, stopped smoking weed, whatever, I think a lot of those feelings that were still hidden deep down that I hadn't confronted yet all came up at once. And then that made it harder to deal with these things, because then that just makes me want to cope even harder with things, right? Like it's like anytime I'm doing better, all of a sudden something hits me that makes me feel bad, and now I go right back into the same old cycles again, right? So this is the first time where I've been confronting those things instead, where I'm letting them come up, those bad feelings, and just riding it out and letting whatever needs to happen mentally to happen. And over time, I realize now that's what's allowing me to finally feel so much better than I ever have before, that I'm not like running away from it anymore. I'm realizing that like you kind of have to let your brain readjust to normalcy after like messing with it for a few years in a row. You know what I mean? Because yeah, I still get like I'll be doing really really well. This happened to me. I don't know if this was yesterday or 2 nights ago, but I'll be doing really well, and then I go out to the park maybe late out at night, and suddenly I'll have a really severe bout of anxiety. Now these little anxiety attacks that I have though, they're really minor. They're just like they last max like a minute, but they come on so intensely, sometimes seemingly not triggered by anything. But I notice how when they happen, my mind instantly goes to not dark places, but it instantly goes to those like feelings that were all bottled up down inside. And I so badly in that moment want to get away from them and cope from them in so many different ways. But instead, by sticking with it and letting myself ride it out now and not giving into the urge to do anything else, I'm noticing how much more relieved and better I feel after it once I get through it. And each time this happens, it feels like I'm progressing one step closer to not experiencing those things anymore. You know what I mean? Like it's part of the process of having to deal with all these problems, which is exactly what I did before I moved to Montreal. When I first dealt with these issues, that was what I did that got me into that amazing place I was in before I moved here. Was I dealt with all these problems and I didn't indulge in any of my issues, and I just faced it head on. It was one of the most brutal things I've ever experienced in my entire life, but at the end of it, I had never felt better. Or at least I hadn't felt that good in like a decade. and yeah, and now I feel like finally I've very slowly and brutally made my way back there, and I'm really excited for the future. And I hate to admit it, I really use ChatGPT as a reference oftentimes for health related stuff. It's actually pretty damn good at it, man. It is way better than like searching WebMD on Google or something. But anyway, I was asking it specifically about recovery from like lifelong habitual marijuana use, and it did say that for people who had patterns of use like myself, that sometimes it legitimately takes like 3 to 5 years of total abstinence before your brain completely readjusts to your new normal. And that part of that process is that if you started to experience things like anxiety attacks when you were high and things like that, that you'll experience these kinds of echoes that will come up again even while you're sober. And it's sort of like your brain readjusting, and it has to learn over time by you letting that stuff ride out. It learns over time that like, oh, okay, I don't need to have an anxiety attack. I don't need to freak out over this situation. It has to like learn not to misfire anymore in the way that it did before because of the drug use. So yeah. So anyway, it's been a crazy experience recently, but it's cool to know, because what I was scared of and why I consulted it was because I was afraid of being just like, am I gonna be stuck? Like, have I fucked my brain up? You know what I mean? Like, am I permanently screwed? Do I just for the rest of my life now, anytime
whatever, just like randomly once a week, I'm just gonna have these random ass anxiety attacks and stuff, and the weird feelings that I experience and whatnot. And so, no, now putting together all my experiences in totality and then consulting this medically, I'm like, okay, no, this is actually uh, uniquely part of the repair process of getting better. And I can see that too. But, you know, you have the moments where it gets really rough and then you start thinking like, fuck, man, is this ever going to end? Is it ever going to get better? But I can feel that it is. I'm feeling better than ever. And that seems to line up apparently with the experiences of other people who had similar problems as me. And I don't know, for the few people who watch this, if anyone can tell, but I'm actually getting a lot better at speaking very straightforwardly like this. Like, I am way less hesitant, way less clouded in my thinking and in expressing myself, I think. Yeah, I don't know. I find myself just being less self-conscious, and it's flowing out of me more easily than it did before. And that's even on a day like today where I'm up late and I didn't sleep well last night before, you know, so even my sleep isn't ideal yet. It's been pretty good recently, but just past couple of nights I kind of screwed this up a bit. It's okay, fix it tomorrow. But even in this state, how much better I'm feeling and how much more clear-minded I am. And no doubt combining that also with the sticking with the regular exercise and now eating really clean as well, no doubt really helps as well. And like I said, I've said it before, I'll say it again, can't overstate just how helpful those things are in making you feel better day to day. All right, that's enough. I think I said everything that's in my heart and on my mind. Props to future Matt, who no doubt is still keeping this up and doing great. Can't wait to meet you there, bro. And I'm gonna eat some salmon, get to bed. Stuff's looking good. Looking good. And you know, I also think a lot about my mortality recently. Like, yeah, I could get cancer tomorrow or something. You know what I mean? Like, I gotta do shit. I gotta get stuff done. And it's about time. Sometimes I think about that a lot. I think about how many times I've screwed things up in my life or not done the things I was supposed to, and being just like, man, there's people out there where, you know, there's so many people that, like, they'll die tomorrow. They'll find out they're gonna die tomorrow. And I've screwed up so many times, and how many times am I gonna screw up thinking, like, why is it fair that I get to keep going in life, but so many other people didn't? You know, so many other people made the same mistakes I did, but then that led to, like, the end of their life or something like that. So I need to be grateful. I need to take advantage of every opportunity I have to do everything I want to do. And you should too, whoever's watching, and also future Matt if you're watching this as well. All right, peace.